Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. Next up on the Horde Hit Parade is this 2001 Recon. 300 bucks. Picked it up not too far from here, out in Orange County, New York. And it has no compression. Sounds like it has a piston. But when you pull the string, not even make-believe compression. Now I'm told, and you know, you're always told things, that the top end was rebuilt and it came back without compression. I was also told that a leak back test was performed on it, and supposedly the valves are feeling okay, which means the head is good. The valves didn't get smashed up by the piston. So let's take a few minutes to figure out what's wrong. When you have no compression and it sounds like you have a piston, what are you thinking? You're thinking the rings are completely buffed, right? The cylinder bore is completely shot. Well, supposedly that was redone, though they might have done it wrong and completely buffed the cylinder wall and rings and all that. Or maybe they didn't put it together right, didn't put the rings in at all, or, you know. Anyhow, so you're thinking piston, rings, you're thinking valves, you're thinking a lot about the valves, and you're thinking about a blown head gasket. So, let's see what it got. First up, I gotta get the plastic off of this. I don't know what they were thinking with this whole situation of raising this up higher. Anyway, hopefully this isn't a 2-hour job where I'm cutting welds. I'll let you know in a second. I guess there was some kind of method to their madness putting that raised bar on it. It turned it into a convertible. Everything was loose, and it looks like you could get right to the head of the engine here. We'll pop off the skull cap. Take a look where those valves are, then we could get the plug out and see where top dead center is and where they have the valves timed up to. 4 10 millimeters out, skull cap lifted. To be honest, it looks pretty dry in here. Let's see. They seem to do the lash right. Oh, there's a pushrod engine. Cool. So we have a pile of good news, right? The valves seem to be going up and down. The piston seems to be going up and down. All good news. Bad news is the cam isn't right here, the cam gear. They're using push rods, right? It doesn't have an overhead cam, which means I can't just look at timing marks and see what's going on. There is a little porthole here that you could see things, but it's very hard with the recoil to get it right to top dead center without it going beyond, and then you can't just turn it back a couple degrees with the recoil. So I'm going to have to get the recoil off of there, and just roughly speaking, using my soft wire feeler gauge, I think it's timed wrong, but once again, let me be sure of that. This is one of those where the engine is going to have to come off the frame, and it has a drive shaft, which is probably why the last guy said, you know what, homie doesn't want to play. I think I'm going to move this thing on. It's a lot more work when you got to pull the engine, but let's see where we are before we make that determination. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. I have it at top dead center there, right? And if you come up here to the valves, so I spun it around a couple of times, and from a valve point of view it seems to be timed correctly and the valves do seem to be closing. And if you look at this engine and somebody told you they did the jug, they rebuilt the top end, and by the way it looks that way and it looks like it was never started, there was really, with a pushrod engine, there really is no reason to mess with the valves, to break into the bottom end. And quite honestly, it doesn't feel like, normally there's some scarring, right? And I don't see any of that. Even down here, right, there's no scarring. You really have to pull the motor. So, they rebuilt the top end. It appears to be timed properly. Now I'm told the valves are sealing, right? But I think what I'm going to do is attempt a leak up check on this, right? I'm going to pressurize it and see if the valves truly are sealing. And maybe it's the air is blowing around the piston into the crankcase, or perhaps I have a blown head gasket. You got to go through all this troubleshooting, because the last thing you want to do is pull the engine if you don't have to, especially this engine, right? It's a shaft drive. It'd be a real pest to pull, so one doesn't want to have to take this out of the machine if you don't really need to. Alright, this is a little sketchy. So let's do a quick leak back test. I have the piston all the way up, top dead center, and you guys can see I have it wired in place with that copper wire. Obviously I'm feeding air into the spark plug, right? Valves are closed, and as I dial up the air, I have the compressor off so I don't light myself up. To be honest with you, it sounds like a head gasket. Sounds like a head gasket. This engine is not all that hard to get the head off. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I don't even have to take off the exhaust of the carburetor. Yeah, let's pull the head off and see what's going on in there. If this thing is dead, I just as soon know that before. I don't want it to just sit in storage for the next 100 years. Yeah, let's pop the head off and see what they did or didn't do. All the bolts are out. 2, 1, 2, and 2. Look at this as a handle. And then start looking for why it won't come out. There's a head gasket there. I actually might have to take this off. So they claim they rebuilt this. Normally when they're that loose, if by rebuilt means they clean the valves and put it back, or clean the, I don't think they, it doesn't feel like it has rings. Alright, Let's lift up the jug and see what we have. Actually, I don't know, that might be a one-piecer. Oh, it is a two-piece, and you guys can see there's a gasket there. And the rings are completely buffed. There are like no rings left. Yeah. Piston, I've seen them a lot worse. Well, boy, that don't feel so good. Yeah, that don't feel so good. Well, I hit it with some carburetor cleaner, and this is what I'm looking at. So, they're saying the top end was rebuilt. I'm not well if it was. Those rings are completely shot, and I mean, the piston didn't look all that bad, everything considered. At this point, this is where I need to go on this. If I'm going to use this bore again, I'm going to have to try honing it out and see if it cleans up a little bit. I'm just not liking the looks of that. The piston didn't look too bad. I have to give it a little side to side to see what the wrist pin and what the crank bearing, what the bottom sounds like, where the piston bolts on to the crank. So I'll give that a little side by side, a little, see what that's going to come back to life, or it's going to be a thumpy monster where it bangs until it blows up. Amusing, but a tremendous expense of time and money most of the time. And I need to do some research. Some of these engines, particularly the push rod ones, have very humble roots, which means the parts are interchangeable with something else that's mass produced. So, and like they go through 1 million of them in Asia. I think once again, they were in there. I think they put a new gasket into it. I think somebody put a little time into this, but I think they were a little cheap when it came to money. And they did not have a successful repair. Anyhow, somehow or another you get a feeling about a machine. I think this machine will run again. Stay tuned to see what we do with it. I have to go do some research and figure out what exactly that will be. Anyhow, in the meantime, I need you all to keep your feet down, your heads up, and I need you all to get out there and enjoy each and every day. You don't know how many you're going to get, so make sure you get out there and have some fun. Bye now.